Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, I've been noticing a lot of right-wing art that shows like somebody booting out a Latino, and it's like calling for mass deportations. And in the threads that I'll read, you'll see people who are saying like immigrants are draining the system, our country's going to hell in a handbasket because of immigrants, illegal immigrants and such. And so I wanted just to point out how it's a common trait in American history to scapegoat immigrants for financial woes of the nation. And I think it should be reminded to the populace of America that our nation is bad because of us as a people in allowing our society to follow the liberals, right? The secular liberal atheists mixed with kind of the occultists, and that our politicians are openly and brazenly corrupt. Okay? We have a hybrid form of a democracy, right? Not a direct democracy, sort of indirect, but we do have a constitutional republic where we elect people who go to represent us to act on our behalf. So, if our representatives are bad, it's our own fault because we elected them. Or we didn't care enough to participate in the system, and then the rot was able to grow, right? If mold is growing and you don't fix it, it's your fault for letting it spread. Okay? So, our politicians doing lots of wars. Afghanistan, Iraq, look up how much we send to Israel, how much we are, spending by giving Ukraine money, and look around and say, it's the politicians misusing our tax money and taxing us too much that is causing a lot of problems, as well as high interest debt banking. Okay? Who sets that? Who sets those interest rates? Why is inflation so bad? Right? There's so many things you can look at, especially for food. Okay, let's look something really honestly at our culture. So many don't want to grow a backdoor garden or fight to grow a front yard garden. Some communities will not allow you to grow vegetables in your front yard. So if you have a row of cabbages, a watermelon patch, cantaloupes, they don't want you to have that because they think it lowers the value of the community, and they want you to have either rocks or pretty much a lawn. Now imagine if you got everyone in your community to grow food, and then on Saturday and Sunday you came together and you bartered some of those products to those who need it, right? But then there's zoning. Oh, you can't set up a booth here to do that. There's so many regulations, okay, that prevent people from growing more food, and a lot of people are lazy. They don't want to grow food. Okay? So, remember, you need to examine how we are our own worst enemy. It's us, the citizens, who let our nation collapse. It's our fault. It's not the immigrant who's like, I want to be a dishwasher at a cafe. I don't speak English. Can I get a community college class for a lower price so that I can learn English? Like, it's not their fault. I just don't understand why people think like, oh, they're going on the public dole. California has a massive economy, okay? Has a lot of taxes, true. It's a sanctuary state, right? But what about the states that are not sanctuary states? Okay, look at Alabama, North Dakota, Wyoming. Look at their productivity, their poverty levels, okay? Who's causing those states to fail? There's more jobs in California, okay? Because there's a booming, busting economy that is struggling. After the lockdowns, we lost a lot of restaurants and stuff, yes. However, and there's a lot of crime, but the ability for Californians to create a business and do something is substantial, okay? And more now, we have to make sure that we are holding our politicians accountable. Okay? It's always a trick to be like, look at, that poor people coming across the border who want a WIC program. It's their fault for wanting to be fed. They have no right to come here. The guys who maybe they have less manners, they're the whole reason why women are dressing half naked in the street and are feminists. You see what I'm saying? It's like, we'll see plenty of homegrown scumbags. And it's almost like we overlook that as a nation and then see the misbehavior of some immigrants. Or we think if someone comes legally, that somehow means that they're an upstanding, moral person. Like, when someone applies to come to a country, you don't know if they're evil. They have a lot of money to pay, right? But money doesn't equal morality. Because if that was true, all the politicians would be like saints. Do you see what I'm saying? How many crimes are committed by elites that go off the radar? They got lawyers to pay this, looking for loopholes. They have all the trickery to be more hidden criminals rather than raw violent thugs. Do you see what I'm saying? So, criminality can hurt a lot of people, and at the higher levels of political corruption, that hurts more people. You see what I'm saying? If you want the illegals to do good and be good, you don't ostracize and alienate. That strategy hasn't worked. Rather, you go to them, incorporate them. What do you need? Hey, there's classes on this. Have you considered going to community college? Do you have a job? So, help them not resort to crime or prostitution. Make sure their kids have everything they need so they don't grow up resenting you. But if you're just finger pointing and screaming at them and making them feel down, well, that's going to cause some animosity there, isn't it? So we need to do better. We have to also make sure that we are holding ourselves accountable. Are we going to just let everything fall apart and then sit there, put our hands in the air and be like, oh, it's all those illegal immigrants' fault while the country is bad? Meanwhile, you have the politicians sending men and women, but a huge portion of men, to go fight in more wars, right? Giving money, putting them in bases. Those people dying and being away from their wives and children is creating more single parents, right? And then these people will say, single motherhood is bad. You shouldn't have that social safety net. It's not enough for a woman to be alone all the time. She's going to cheat on him, when he deploys. And now you just have this broken relationship, kids without a dad, more war widows, more divorces. War destroys us and destroys the soldier, coming back with health problems, mental problems, and destroys people's communities abroad. So when you have neoliberals and neocons, war hawks, desiring more and more war, this is a problem. This is a problem. And that's part of us. We have to take accountability for that. Okay? And if you want people to be more politically savvy, then you need to make sure that social media doesn't censor all the political speech. See, a thing about YouTube and, old Twitter, not new Twitter, but Facebook, Instagram especially. So Instagram and YouTube highly censor political stuff. Okay? When you censor it, the conversations that need to be had in order to flesh out knowledge don't happen. And this is a problem if you want people to participate politically. If people feel that only one side of the spectrum can be heard, and that the platforms are using every excuse, like a mean meme, in order to be like, well, this is why we need more censorship. This puts people off from wanting to participate in politics because they can see the system is rigged, and then they go back to watching nonsense. And then they become uninformed voters. And so, if we push political science, history, rhetoric, and noble things on our population, and we put our best foot forward in doing that, we also get thicker skin, We learn how to communicate our ideas. We learn to get triggered less. We learn to hear tough truths. We become more adept to hearing criticisms and criticizing others with finesse. And that makes us all better, right? But if we're all walking on eggshells because we don't want to get canceled and lose our jobs, well, then the country can't really get fixed because people aren't allowed to come together and talk it out. Because there'll be the cancel culture will go to their job and they'll lose things. And then now the politicians, if we want them to be good, they don't have the real vision of what the people want. They can't really see what needs to be fixed because the information is being denied to them and social media is skewing it, as well as using bot attacks and whatnot. And then people are protesting and rioting in the street. There's no conversation to be had. And these type of protests don't necessarily convince too many minds, but inhibit the productivity of, bystanders, which just causes more resentment. So my point is that a lot of lazy intellectuals will scapegoat immigrants instead of saying, what's the solution? We need to go and convince these people of our ideas, welcome them into the culture, talk to them about what our culture is, right? And I think that's really important. Imagine if you could just set up a booth and start doing your pamphlets and stuff. That's just a small thing, but it's something important. It's something that can start a conversation. The UK has Speaker's Corner. America doesn't really have that, but imagine if you could start something similar to that. And it was just open all the time. Or, how we have open mics where people can go and tell jokes? Maybe you get someone to go on stage and they tell their political opinion and then they can have a session of talk with somebody. Now, Steven Crowder does his Change My Mind tables, and the university brats, they have meltdowns and they try to get him banned. And that's crazy to me because he's just some guy. I mean, why would you be so offended and be that censorious? So we need more people doing booths like that everywhere. I think it would really help us. I love going to some booths where they're selling a book, and I'm like, what's this book about? And you talk to them and you're like, oh, cool. People who shut their ears off and they can't handle to hear a tough criticism of their philosophy are very weak people. Very weak people, highly emotional and irrational and impulsive. And so if you want people to have more accountability, we have to start here at the ground level, the base of the people. And then if we all do that and we elect the right representatives, they'll have the knowledge and the moral character and fiber to fight for that in the abyss of the Senate and Congress, right? It's interesting when you really examine it, how we Americans failed. And a lot of Americans don't want to acknowledge how many of us prefer bread and circuses. So you have to get people motivated. And I think that'd be very potent. But again, YouTube promotes the nonsense era of pranks and stuff like that, when in reality, if you think if they wanted the world to be better, they would actually push some independent journalists. No one's learning anything from the big corporations who are losing their monopoly. You don't learn anything really from CNN or MSNBC. It's controlled government propaganda. There's no truth there. And the journalists, the talking head anchors, they just want their paycheck. They read the teleprompter, it's lick their finger, where's the breeze going? So that is something that we need to remember. Okay, so join alternative platforms, BitChute, Rumble, Odyssey. Don't just stick to YouTube, but have a presence on Getter, MeWe, different apps, Mastodon, right? Get out there and just start. Just start talking. Try to have those conversations. But scapegoating immigrants for why America is going downhill It's just not accurate. From the 60s, and to now, you can see the trajectory of Hollywood. To deny the effects of Hollywood on the culture is insane, right? It's completely insane. So who pushed our culture that way? The majority of liberals, the farther they strayed from religion. They want endless freedom, no restrictions really if you look at it. To them, restrictions is an impediment on their sovereignty, and they kind of think anything's permissible as long as you're not hurting anybody else. But they don't really tell you what is hurting someone else. So why should we allow people to hurt themselves? There's a lot there. And what does the whole word mean, hurt? Really look at it. It's a very deep conversation. So I find people who are maximizing followers off of saying mass deportations, like, I mean, Laura Loomer looks unhinged. Like, she's bloodthirsty. She wants to just take out Muslims in Gaza. She said move out of a city. She's irate. I don't know how much more Botox she's going to put in her face. And now she's like, deport immigrants and stop birthright citizenship. And like, she's just like foaming at the mouth for like hating everyone. It's quite bizarre. I can see why. And I remember when she lost her Twitter originally, she went to the headquarters, I believe, and chained herself there, like handcuffed herself there. Like, she's a very strange woman. And yet she's very close to Trump. It's quite strange. So when you hear women like that, and Tim Pool especially, pushing for this catastrophic mass deportation agenda and not looking at the consequences of what could happen, I find that to be bizarre. Figure out a game plan, right? See, we are so atomized, like people don't know their neighbors. They're afraid to talk on community colleges. They're afraid to be who they are. They want to keep the LinkedIn profile polished. You know, that doesn't help. Go to someone and talk to them. Like, start a conversation. Learn how to have a disagreement. More and more now, people, they think you can't, everything's an insult. Everything is an attack on who they are as a person. Some people have not learned how to disagree. They can't stand it when you reply. You know, it's strange. Thin-skinned is like a burden on a person. Like, if you melt down anytime someone tries to hold you accountable for your actions, and you're bullheaded and you don't want to listen to it, you're the problem. So we have to make sure as a culture, if we want to turn the ship around, that we're having honest conversations about what really led to the destruction of the job market, and why are things so bad? Is it really the guy who's going to go work in the slaughterhouse, or the lady who's going to be a maid? Is it really them, or is it the politicians we elected? How have we lived our lives? Have we lived our lives in a way that would make America better if everyone mimicked us? Think about it. A lot of people underestimate their own sins and how that affects everyone else. A man cheating on his wife adds to the decay of America because it creates more broken homes. A man being a porn addict destroys America because he promotes women to enter into that line of work. Creates more hedonism, more human trafficking. Only evil comes from that business arena, right? So our own private actions ripple out and create the biome, creates the whole ecosystem. How we perceive our surroundings and how we articulate ourselves and design our surroundings has an effect on everything. So if you want to change that, you have to keep being that beacon of light. You have to keep being it. It's really important. The immigrant isn't to blame for single-parent households, divorces, adultery, gangs, political corruption, warmongering, misuse of foreign aid, the drug crisis. People wanting to use drugs is the problem. That's a problem. the pain people have from their childhood or from trauma, you name it, them wanting to use drugs is the problem. We have to trace the chains. What originated this action? How can we fix those problems? And then having open and honest and raw discussions about the solutions to those problems. I've tried to do that in numerous ways. It's kind of a more dry topic. Doesn't really interest a lot of people, but hopefully more people start to say, hey, you know what? That cliche saying of you have to be the change you want to see in the world is true. Okay? And looking in the black mirror of the self can tell you what you did to make the world worse and what you can do to make it better. Let me know what you think. Because pointing at the immigrant and fear-mongering isn't gonna stop that. You have to be ready to convince them of your ideas, persuade them, guide them, and accept that not everyone's gonna agree with you. That's a better way forward, personally. But if you think that you're gonna have jackboots soldiers kicking down doors and grabbing women by their hair and shoving them into vans and dumping kids in Mexico who were raised in America, if that's your solution, your party's done. Because even people who agree with you on other things, that type of action is quite evil and shows that you don't really have any humanity or self-awareness to see what really is the problem. Right? Very interesting topic. Very interesting topic. If you'd like to join my blog and support the channel, it's www.subscribestar.com/MilahanArchive. Hope to see you there.